Welcome to SS14 Study Session 14, Game Theory 1. Introduction. In this lecture, we shall introduce the concept of game theory through various examples. Game theory deals with games of strategy rather than games of choice. Objective. At the end of this lecture, you shall be able to discuss classical examples of games and be able to analyze elements of a game matrix. A. Nature of game theory. It is the scientific tools, methods, and language that allow a coherent analysis of the decision-making process when there are more than one decision makers and each agent's payoff possibly depends on the actions taken by the other agents. In such a decision process, since an agent's preferences on his actions depend on which actions the other parties take, his action depends on his beliefs about what the others do. Of course, what the others do depends on their beliefs about what each agent does. In this way, a player's action, in principle, depends on the actions available to each agent. Each agent's preferences on the outcomes, each player's beliefs about which actions are available to each player, and how each player ranks the outcomes, and further, his beliefs about each player's beliefs, ad infinitum. The former theory defines a game as consisting of a set of players, a set of pure strategies for each player, information set for each player, and the player's payoff functions. A player's pure strategy specifies a choice for each time she has to choose in the game. If a player's strategy requires choices at more than one time, we say that the strategy contains a number of actions. Games in which players choose between actions simultaneously and only once are called static games. In dynamic games, players choose between actions in a determined temporal order. All players of a game together determine a consequence. Each chooses a specific strategy, and their combination, which is called a strategy profile, yields a specific consequence. The consequence of a strategy profile can be a material prize, for example, money, but it can also be any other relevant event, like being the winner or feeling guilt. Game theory is really only interested in the player's evaluations of this consequence, which are specified in each player's payoff or utility function. The part of the theory that deals with situations in which players' choice of strategies cannot be enforced is called the theory of non-cooperative games. Cooperative game theory, in contrast, allows for pre-play agreements to be made binding, e.g., through legally enforceable contracts. 1. In order to analyze a game, we need to know 1. Who the players are, 2. Which actions are available to them, 3. How much each player values each outcome, 4. What each player knows. We need to specify not only what each player knows about external parameters, such as the payoffs, but also about what they know about the other players, knowledge and beliefs about these parameters, etc. In the games of complete information, where everything that is known by a player is common knowledge, we say that X is common knowledge if everyone knows X, and everyone knows that everyone knows X, and everyone knows that everyone knows that everyone knows X, ad infinitum. Knowledge is defined as an operator on the propositions satisfying the following properties. If I know X, X must be true. If I know X, I know that I know X. If I don't know X, I know that I don't know X. If I know something, I know all its logical implications. In this lecture, we are going to use examples to illustrate game theory. B. Game 1. Prisoner Dilemma Game. This game has been attributed to Al Chalker of Princeton University. In this game, there are two thieves who have been caught by the police and brought before the magistrate. As there is only circumstantial evidence to their crime, the magistrate comes up with the following clever scheme. He locks them up in separate cells in such a way that they cannot communicate with each other. If they both plead guilty, they get 10 years imprisonment each. On the other hand, if both plead not guilty, they get away with 1 year prison terms. But if one pleads guilty and the other not guilty, then the one who pleads guilty gets 0.5 years and the others take 2 and the other gets 15 years imprisonment. The question now is, did the magistrate do the right thing by offering this scheme to the prisoners? The actual game structure of this decision situation is given in the table below. Prisoner's Dilemma Game. The above structure is known as the normal form game, where the sequences of moves and counter moves, in other words, the temporal structure, are suppressed. Players are assumed to move simultaneously and choose one of the two actions, to plead guilty or not guilty. The actions of the two players result in an outcome. An outcome is generally marked by the payoffs. Given this fact along with the knowledge that she is a rational player, leads the role player to believe that if he were in a position, he would choose to plead guilty. With this reasoning at the back of his mind, he prefers to plead guilty. The column player also reasons along the same lines and opts to plead guilty. Note that pleading guilty is the only possible solution in this game. Hence, both end up pleading guilty, indicating the magistrate's scheme. This game brings about the contradicting between the individually rational outcome, both pleading guilty, and what is collectively good for all, both pleading not guilty. It also shows that the resulting solution to the game could be peer to inefficient. Peer to efficient solution is one where the players cannot in any way improve their current payoffs through a different action choice without reducing others' payoffs. In the above game, the outcome where both the prisoners are pleading guilty can be improved upon by both deciding to plead not guilty without hurting the other player's payoff. Hence, we conclude that the unique Nash equilibrium of the game is peer to inefficient. Note that conjectures about the opponent's play have no role in picking the final solution in this game. The equilibrium concept we have used to solve the game is what is known as the Nash equilibrium. Choose the best action from among your action sets given that the opponent will choose a best action. Of course, we assume that the action sets, payoffs, and the game structure are common knowledge. This game can be used to study various issues such as Two firms competing to sell the same product, say a toothpaste. Two nations erecting trade barriers and the exploitation of common property resources, such as fisheries. C. Game 2. Rational pigs. Let us move on to the next game situation. This is a story of two rational pigs. Though both the pigs are rational, one is weak, called subordinate pig, while the other one is strong, christened as dominant pig. These two pigs are put in a cage. There is a lever at one end of this cage, which when pressed delivers, for quantification, exactly 6 grains of maize at the other end. Now, if the pigs want food, they need to learn to press the lever and run to the other end. If the subordinate pig presses the lever, the dominant pig can eat all the 6 grains. On the contrary, if the dominant pig is the one to press the lever, the subordinate pig can eat up 5 grains before the dominant pig arrives. It is observed that once the dominant pig reaches the grain dispenser, it can get everything that is remaining. In the unlikely event of both the pigs pulling the lever together, the subordinate pig, given its lean constitution, can run faster and eat 2 grains. Pressing the lever and running to the grain dispenser involves expenditure of some calories, and for the sake of quantification, we assume that it can be measured in grain units, viz. 0.5 grains. Who will learn to press the lever? The strategy for this game is presented in the table below. Rational pigs. The above normal form game corresponds to the decision problem facing our two rational pigs. For the subordinate pig, whatever the dominant pig does, not pressing the lever is the best strategy, in the sense that its payoff is higher than the other strategy, pressing the lever. Now, what would the dominant pig do? It has to form conjectures about the subordinate pig's behavior. If it believes that the subordinate pig would press the lever, then the best strategy available is to wait near the dispenser. But, putting itself in the subordinate pig's shoes, the dominant pig would realize that the subordinate pig will not press the lever. Given this logical conclusion, it is optimal for the dominant pig to press the lever and get 0.5 grains net compared to starvation. Hence, the dominant pig will learn to press the lever. At times, weakness could be strength. In this game, there is no conflict between individual rationality and collective rationality, unlike the prisoner's dilemma game. D. Game 3. Setting the shop. Let us move on to the third story. Here we face two suya vendors on Lekki Beach trying to find proper locations for their shops. They have to charge the same price to survive, but they can locate anywhere they want on a straight line beach. Their customers are spread out all through the beach and are in general averse to walking. Hence, they would prefer to buy from a shop which is closest to them. Where should the vendors locate their shops? Unlike our two earlier games, here players are forced to form dynamic conjectures. Given the nature of the problem, all the customers to the left of, say, vendor A will buy from him, and those to the right of B would buy from her. Of those in between them, half will go to A and the rest to B. Now, A reasons as follows. If I can shift my shop 1 yard closer to B, then I can get that many extra customers. But B, being a rational seller, will reason the same way, and hence she would also move a yard closer to my location. Given that, I need to go 2 yards closer to B, and she would also do the same reasoning and move 2 yards closer. Hence, I need to go 3 yards closer. Ultimately, this logic will stop when A decides to locate the shell right next to that of B, and B also does the same thing, and it is not difficult to figure out that this location will be exactly in the middle of the beach. Unlike the previous games, here the logic is fairly subtle. In the previous games, either both or at least one player had a unique best response to whatever the other player did. In this location game, both the players have to simultaneously form conjectures about their rival's choice. There are many real-world situations which bear out the logic inherent in this game. You would have noticed that petrol pumps are located close to each other. The same is true for shops selling foreign goods. Also, next time when you fly, notice how different airlines schedule their flights close to each other on a given route. Game 4. When agents think through what the other players will do, taking what the other players think about them into account, they may find a clear way to play the game. Consider the following game. Here, players 1 has strategies TMB and player 2 has strategies LMR. They pick their strategies simultaneously. The payoffs for players 1 and 2 are indicated by the numbers in parentheses. The first one for player 1 and the second one for player 2. For instance, if player 1 plays T and player 2 plays R, then player 1 gets a payoff of 2 and player 2 gets 1. Let's assume that each player knows that these are the strategies and the payoffs. Each player knows that each player knows this. Each player knows that each player knows that each player knows this. Ad infinitum. Now, player 1 looks at his payoffs and realizes that no matter what the other player plays, it is better for him to play M rather than B. That is, if 2 plays LM, gives 2 and B gives 1. If 2 plays M gives 1, B gives 0. And if 2 plays RM, gives 0, B gives -1. Therefore, he realizes that he should not play B. Now he compares T and M. He realizes that if player 2 plays L or M is better than T. But if she plays R, T is definitely better than M. Would player 2 play R? What will she play? To find an answer to these questions, player 1 looks at the game from player 2's point of view. He realizes that for player 2, there is no strategy that is outright better than any other strategy. For instance, R is the best strategy if 1 plays B, but otherwise it is strictly worse than M. Would player 2 think that player 1 would play B? Well, she knows that player 1 is trying to maximize its expected payoff given by the first entries, as everyone knows. She must then deduce that player 1 will not play B. Therefore, player 1 concludes she will not play R, as it is worse than M in this case. Ruling out the possibility that player 2 plays R, player 1 looks at his payoffs and sees that M is now better than T no matter what. On the other side, player 2 goes through similar reasoning and concludes that I must play M and therefore plays L. Game 5. The kind of reasoning in the above analysis does not always yield such a clear prediction. Imagine that you want to meet with a friend in one of two places, about which you both are indifferent. Unfortunately, you cannot communicate with each other until you meet. This situation is formalized in the following game, which is called Peer Coordination Game. Here, Player 1 chooses between top and bottom rows, while player 2 chooses between left and right columns. In each box, the first and the second numbers denote utilities of players 1 and 2, respectively. Note that player 1 prefers top to bottom if he knows that player 2 plays left. He prefers bottom if he knows that player 2 plays right. He is indifferent if he thinks that the other player is likely to play either strategy with equal probabilities. Similarly, player 2 prefers left if she knows that player 1 plays top. There is no clear prediction about the outcome of this game. One may look for the stable outcomes, strategy profiles, in the sense that no player has incentive to deviate if he knows that the other players play the prescribed strategies. Here, top left and bottom right are such outcomes, but bottom left and top right are not stable in this sense. For instance, if bottom left is known to be played, each player would like to deviate, as it is shown in the following figure. Here, the symbol means player 1 deviates to top, etc. Unlike in this game, mostly players have different preferences on the outcomes, inducing conflict. This is illustrated by the next game. G. Game 6. In the following game, which is known as the Battle of Sexes, conflict and the need for coordination as present together. Here, once again, players would like to coordinate on top left or bottom right. But now, player 1 prefers to coordinate on top left, while player 2 prefers to coordinate on bottom right. The stable outcomes are again top left and bottom right. Now, in the Battle of Sexes, imagine that player 2 knows what player 1 does when she takes a action. This can be formalized via the following tree. Here, player 1 chooses between top and bottom. Then, knowing what player 1 has chosen, player 2 chooses between left and right. Clearly, now player 2 would choose left if player 1 plays top, and choose right if player 1 plays bottom. Knowing this, player 1 would play top. Therefore, one can argue that the only reasonable outcome of this game is top left. This kind of reasoning is called backward induction. H. Game 7. Games against nature. This is an example of decision theory for a single agent. Expected utility theory for a single agent is sometimes called the theory of games against nature. Consider this example of planning a party. Our agent is planning a party and is worried about whether it will rain or not. The utilities and probabilities for each state and action can be presented as follows. The expected utility of an action A given uncertainty about a state S can be represented as follows. EU bracket S or A equals to probability S or A times utility S or A plus probability not S or A, utility not S or A. Note that the probability of a state can depend on the agent's choice of action, although in the above example it does not. For the party problem, EU outside equals to 1 divided by 3 bracket 1 plus 2 divided by 3 bracket 3 equals to 2.67. EU inside equals to 1 divided by 3 bracket 2 plus bracket 2 divided by 3 bracket 2 equals to 2. Therefore, you should choose outside the action with the higher expected utility. Game 8. No binding agreement. This is an example of decision theory for more than one agent, each of them acting autonomously without any binding agreement. In this, we'll assume two self-utility maximizing agents, or players, each of whom has complete information about the options available to themselves and the other player as well as their own and the other's payoffs, utilities, under each option. Consider two friends, Chris and Kim. They both enjoy each other's company, but neither can communicate with the other before deciding whether to stay at home, where they would not see each other, or go to the beach this afternoon, where they could see each other. Each prefers going to the beach to being at home, and prefers being with the other person rather than being apart. This game can be presented by the following normal or matrix form: friends with symmetric preferences. Each player has a set of strategies, home or beach in this example. In this example, going to the beach is a strictly dominant strategy for each player because it always yields the best outcome, no matter what the other player does. Thus, if the players are both maximizing their individual expected utilities, each will go to the beach. So beach minus beach is dominant strategy equilibrium for this game. Because of this, Kim and Chris, if they are rational, do not need to cooperate, make an agreement ahead of time. Each can just pursue their own interests and the best outcome will occur for both. Now consider Betty and John. John likes Betty, but Betty does not like John that much. Each knows this, and neither wants to call the other before deciding what to do this afternoon. Stay at their respective homes or go to the neighborhood swimming pool. Here is the normal form of the game: friends with asymmetric preferences. In this case, Betty's best strategy depends on what John does. If she assumes John is rational, she will reason that he will not stay home because going to the pool is a dominant strategy for him. Knowing this, she can decide to stay home because 2 is greater than 1. This is called iterated dominance. In this example, Betty gets higher utility than John because of their relative preferences, and John gets less utility than he would have if Betty wanted to be with him. In this example, pool minus home, 3, 0, home minus pool, 2, 1, and pool, 1, 2, are all paired to optimal outcomes. Recall that an outcome is paired to optimal or efficient if no agent can be made better off than that outcome without making another agent worse off. The equilibrium outcomes in both this example and the previous one are paired to optimal.